Hey everyone, welcome back. This video is a little bit of a request because I never did any sort of ranking or overall evaluation of the cards from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan set. So I thought I'd put together a little bit of a, I wouldn't call this one necessarily a ranking, although I did kind of rank them. We're going to try and find some gems in the commons and uncommon range. And we'll take a look at the rares too, because there's definitely some good cards in the rares here. But as far as the low rarity cards go, I didn't find a ton that were really good. But I feel like we should take a look at a few that maybe you could think about as something that you might want to use. Or if you're not, in platinum or anything like that yet, there might be some usable cards that you might have in your collection you just don't know. So let's start off with the commons here. So first ones we're going to look at, we got Ray of Ruin. Destroy the first opposing non-token creature. So that's already untargeted removal. If you can't destroy an opposing vehicle support, which is kind of weird. I don't think I've ever seen a card that specifically targets vehicles. And then if you can't destroy an opposing non-land support. So again, lands are increasingly difficult to just remove outright, but lands aren't that scary right now, so there's not a lot you have to worry about when it comes to lands. Some of the ones with that the god creatures make are pretty nasty, but other than that, not a lot of people using lands just as mana generators, like gem conversion. So that could or could not be something that you take into account. But for 11 mana, for a common to give you so many different options as far as removal goes, not a bad card. Definitely one that you should take a look at, especially in the upcoming standard rotation later this year. This might be something you see played a little bit more. But since we have like Void Rend and things like that, Invoke Despair, still in standard, you don't see cards like this too often, but you might later on. Next we got Relic's Roar. So this is one of those ones that change the base power and toughness, but this one has probably the highest power change. So it goes from, so the reason you want to play these cards is because if you have a token stack that, say you have like 1/1 fairies or whatever on the board and you got like 10 of them, if you cast this card, they go from power of 10 to power of 60, like that. And then this creature gains a dinosaur subtype until end of turn. That might be something worth looking into, but for me, that's not really the reason to play it. It's about changing the power and toughness. So a lot of times when you're playing cards like this, it's so that you basically multiply your token stack by 6 and kind of swing for a huge hit if you have a big token stack. So this one is the largest amount I've seen, I think, in the game. So definitely something worth looking at. If you play a lot of tokens, rabble rousing and whatnot, this one is one that you maybe want to put into those kinds of decks. Alright, next we got Waterwind Scout. When this creature enters the battlefield, create X map tokens. X is the number of merfolk cards you control, up to 3, including their reinforcements. So this one I kind of had fun pairing with the Kiora Masterpiece creature. It's not an amazing card, but it is nice that you're able to create 3 map tokens. If you don't remember what map tokens do, they are a support card. They're a token. When this support is destroyed, target creature you control explores 2. So when you break these map tokens, you're basically converting 2 gems to whatever color of the creature you choose is. So it's good to make mono-colored creatures explore, because you're more likely to make a gem match in that way. So creating a bunch of maps means that whenever the support is destroyed, a map, doesn't matter if it's on your turn or your opponent's turn, it'll still trigger for your side because you created the map. So maps are pretty good, actually. I'm surprised at how much I actually like these map tokens. So the ability to keep making more map tokens by continuously casting this creature by whatever means you might have is pretty interesting, I think. Alright, next we got Over the Edge. Destroy an opposing artifact or enchantment support, then target creature you control explores 2. So it's always good to have a card that has more than one function, especially when the function is very conditional. So this card won't cast unless you destroy an opposing artifact or enchantment support. But, you know, there's a lot of people playing a lot of strong supports right now that are either artifacts or enchantments, so it's a little expensive, but because you can explore with it, it's possible that you get some of that mana back by creating some gem matches with the Explorer. So, not an amazing card, but it's definitely one of the better commons in this set, which isn't really saying much, though. Next we got In the Presence of Ages, 10 mana, it does have flash. Pick one of the first 4 different lands or creature cards from your library, then destroy the others. So this is similar to Gather the Pack. Even though it's more expensive, and at least you get to choose what you get from your library. Destroying the other cards is nice because there's a lot of reasons you want to send cards to your graveyard, creatures or lands. So this is a little bit of a combo piece. Not sure why it really needs flash, but whatever. Yeah, if you're using this card for strategies where you rely on taking creatures from your graveyard and putting them into play, this is a nice little addition to that you could stack with Gather the Pack if you want. But, you know, it's always nice to have some fetch in your library. And then finally, the last common that I think you should give a look at is Orazca Puzzle Door. Support card artifact. At the end of your turn, increase this card's level by 1. At the beginning of your turn, you may pick one of the first 2 cards from your library. If you do fetch that card, it gains X mana. X is equal to this card's level. Then this card's level becomes 1. Otherwise, create a gold token. The reason I like this card, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but it's a pretty decent way to generate mana, especially if you're newer to the game and you don't have really good lands, or, you know, you just don't have a lot in your collection that reliably gains you mana every turn. So you don't have to necessarily trigger it every turn. You can just let it create a gold token. And those gold tokens can stack up, and they can give you 3 mana when you break them. So it's just an easy way to get a little extra mana. It is 12 mana to put on the board, but if you can somehow cheat it out, it's an easy way to just get a little bit of bump in mana as you go along. So it's a nice card for starting players, and you'll probably find better as you go along pretty quickly, but it's actually a pretty decent little card. I was actually impressed by this card when I was mastering it, so not bad. Alright, let's go to our uncommons now. So first we got Nikanzil Current Conductor. 2/3 Merfolk Scout, legendary. only 9 mana to cast. When a land support enters the board under your control, target creature you control explores 2. So there's a lot of different ways to get land supports onto the board, and to be able to just keep converting gems through explore whenever you do so, it's actually a pretty powerful effect. When you convert gems for the first time during your turn, this creature gets +1/+1. So that basically just means that you're going to get a little buff that first time you do that. But I haven't really tried to kind of combo this up or make it really trigger a lot. But it's definitely one that I would mess around with and see what I can do with it. It's green, so there's a lot of ways for especially like Renin 7 or Renin Realmbreaker. They easily get land supports onto the battlefield, so there's something there for this one. If you're converting gems every time you put a land support on the battlefield, there's definite combo potential there, so worth taking a look at. If you guys figure out a way to really make this card shine, let me know, and I'll see you in the Discord. Next one, Kutzel Malamet Exemplar, 3/3 Cat Warrior. The only thing I don't like about this card is it's 16 mana to cast. It's a little expensive. When you cast this creature or this creature attacks, this creature explores 1. Then if your opponent has more cards in their hand than you, you draw 2 cards. So there's a lot that you get out of this card. You're getting that little gem conversion, exploring 1. You're drawing 2 cards if your opponent has more cards in their hand. So it's a bit conditional in that way. But it's a decent uncommon, and I do like the exploring when it attacks. So you're either going to convert a gem to green or white. Okay, next one is Lodestone Needle. It's a 10 mana, 2 shield artifact with craft 1 artifact. It also has flash. When this support enters the board, target opposing creature gains stun counter 2. When this card is crafted, exile this card and create a Guidestone Compass token. What does that do? Oops. At the beginning of your turn, target creature you control explores 1. So the main reason this card stuck out to me is because of when this support enters the board, target opposing creature gains stun counter 2. So if you're using Virtue of Knowledge Urza Saga loop, you're basically, if this is the only artifact in your deck, you can basically lock down all of your opponent's creatures by giving them as many stun counters as you want. So that's as long as you can target the creature, that's a good way of going about that. So that's kind of fun. And then I find this kind of interesting. At the beginning of your turn, target creature you control explores 1. So that's an extra bit of gem conversion for having this creature on the board. But I really am most intrigued by that whole stun counter combo that you can do there. Next one is Scytheclaw Raptor. Creature, dinosaur, costs 17 for a 2/3 creature. However, if you pump this creature up, you can really wreak havoc on your opponent. Because right now, it is bugged. When your opponent casts or copies a creature card, that actually should say summon for the way it's working. But your opponent loses life equal to this creature's power. So anytime your opponent basically casts or copies anything, you're pinging them for some life loss there. So it can be really powerful. I did a short little showcase of how this works on my review of Quintorius Can. So if you haven't watched that and you want to see how that works, go ahead and go over there. I'll put the link in the card. Next one is Defossilize. Return the first creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, then target creature you control explores 2. It's 12 mana, which is a little bit more expensive than I like a lot of these return creatures to the battlefield type of cards are, but I do like that you can choose what creature you control explores 2. I guess a lot of times you're going to be doing it to the creature that you just grabbed, but you don't have to. So it's just one of these graveyard recursion cards that have a little extra upside. Master's Guide Mural. When this support enters the board, create a blue golem token. When this card is crafted, exile this card and create a Master's Manufactory token. So this one is another one that you can pair with the Virtue of Knowledge Urza Saga loop. You create this artifact and you're going to create a blue golem token. That's a 4/4, so that's not a bad creature. Pretty solid power and toughness, especially if you create a bunch of them. So also the Master's Manufactory token, when a non-token artifact card enters the battlefield under your control, create a blue golem token. So that used to be broken because it used to not have the non-token condition on it. So you used to just use this with Guillaume and create basically infinite blue golems. So they had to fix that. It was fun while it lasted, but another reason I love Guillaume. There's a lot you can do with this card. There's a lot of interesting synergies that are happening with there. So even though they nerfed it, it's still a pretty solid uncommon. Definitely a combo piece. Self-Reflection. Choose target creature. It's a 15 mana spell. Choose target creature, create a token that is a copy of that card into the battlefield under your control. Okay, so this card was slightly disappointing because it doesn't actually when you copy a creature, make it into a token. And I feel like there are some really interesting things you can do if you were to make just a regular creature card into a token, because there's a lot of cards that interact with tokens, such as like Sekkuar, who reinforces tokens every time a creature enters your graveyard. So that can be really monstrous. But it is basically copying any creature that you can target. So you can copy one of yours or one of your opponent's creatures. So it is a very solid, strong card, especially if you're copying a creature that has a really good enter the battlefield effect, such as Galta or Atraxa. That's where I use this card. I'm actually using this card a lot now. Once I got over my initial disappointment of some of the funky, unique combos that you could do if this card actually did what it said, but it's still a really good way. It's basically Blade of Shared Souls as a spell is basically what we're talking about here. Swashbuckler's Whip. Support card, artifact equipment. 15 mana, 2 shields. When this support enters the board, discover 2, then discover 2. At the beginning of your turn, your first creature gains +3, or gets +3/+3, and gains reach until the beginning of your turn. So this is a really interesting card. First of all, it's a great card. An uncommon, colorless card that gives you the ability to discover 2 twice is awesome. If you don't remember what Discover does, you should know what Discover does. It's a great mechanic. Pick one of the first X cards from your library, so one of the first 2. Fetch that card, then that card gains half its mana rounded down. Move all cards that weren't fetched this way to the bottom of your library. Exit this card to discover value. So you're basically getting to choose one of your next 2 cards, giving it half its mana, which is amazing. That's a really powerful effect. And then you're giving your first creature reach. So it's not that the first creature on the battlefield is going to always get reach. You're basically selecting a creature to get reach for that turn. So it works a little different than some of these other sort of equipment supports. So I kind of like that about it. And then we got Sunbird Standard. So this card I use basically in all of my monocolor decks right now, I think. So it's a support card, 14 mana. It's a little expensive to get out onto the battlefield, which is the only downside to it. It only has 2 shields too. It's another downside, I guess. I guess this card has have a handful of downsides, but we'll get into the rest of them. At the beginning of your turn, convert 4 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. That's great. That is better than most lands in the game in Standard right now, but it's an artifact. When this card is crafted, exile this card and create a Sunbird Effigy token. What does that do? Sunbird Effigy, colorless creature, artifact bird construct, 1/1, token with flying, vigilance, and haste. At the beginning of your turn, this creature gets +X/+X until the end of turn. X is the number of different creatures in your graveyard. So, I mean, I don't even really need to talk about this creature here. We're not going to be using this card for that reason. And the only thing that's annoying is that if that little craft 2 creature prompt, you usually aren't going to deselect it, but you can on accident hit that and basically get rid of your support and create that creature instead, which is so much less useful than converting 4 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. So there's a few little things you got to worry about when you're playing this card. The shield count is kind of low. It's a bit expensive to get out, and it's an artifact, which means it's a bit easier to destroy than it would be if it was a land, but still fantastic uncommon, especially for mono color Planeswalkers. So there you go. And the final uncommon I want to talk about is Curator of Sun's Creation. Creature, 3/3, 14 mana, human artificer. At the beginning of your turn, discover 2, then discover 2. So it's basically you're doing the Swashbuckler's Whip thing, but you're doing it every turn. So this is a great way to get your pieces you want into your hand and eventually onto the battlefield. And you're getting to do it every turn. So as long as this creature stays on the board, it's giving you a lot of good card advantage, giving you lots of mana as you go. And yeah, pretty fantastic creature card, especially for an uncommon. The only downside really is that it's kind of a weak body, but once you get all your other creatures and cards onto the battlefield, you can switch this out for a more devastating creature. That's how I see it. Okay, I think those are all the uncommons I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there are some that are maybe worth looking at, but those are my top 10, I want to say. Maybe 11. So some solid cards in there. I would say the top 3 of those. I would say the top 3 of those uncommon cards are definitely worth using, even at the platinum level. So let's talk about some rares. So we got Sunken Citadel. That's one that is getting a lot of chatter about in Discord. It's a land cave, 13 mana for 4 shields. 4 shields is good. When this support enters the board, convert 7 gems to the most present color on the board, and at the beginning of your turn, increase all of your positive mana bonuses by 2 until the end of your turn. So there's a lot going on in this card. So it's got a great enter the battlefield effect, converting 7 gems to the most present color on the board, which, depending on the planeswalker you're using, maybe you don't want to do that all the time, because sometimes it won't convert to a color that is advantageous for you. Like, say you're using a mono blue planeswalker, and it sometimes converts to, you know, red or something that doesn't give you much mana. So it's not always, you know, the best gem converter, even though it converts a lot of gems. But the increasing the positive mana bonuses by 2 is really good, especially if you're using Karn or you know, somebody who has good mana gains across the board, like Ren and Realmbreaker or something like that. So, really good card for both Karn or Ren and Realmbreaker, but a solid addition to a lot of decks right now. So, very cool card. I like it a lot, and I think there are people in Discord who just absolutely love it and think it's one of the best cards in the set. This one, Echoing Deeps, I don't actually have yet. It's 14 mana for Shield Land Cave, so similar in construction as the Sunken Citadel. Activate 1. Return the first land support from your graveyard to the board under your control. And then it's just a kind of solid gem converter. At the beginning of your turn, convert 3 gems to your Planeswalker's color. A little expensive for what it is. 14 mana is more than I think the lands from, I want to say, the latest Zendikar set that we got. Forget the name of that one. It's not Battle for Zendikar. That was the earlier one. Zendikar Unleashed. What was it again? I can't remember. But somebody's going to tell me in the comments here. But those are the ones where the rare lands converted 3 gems to a specific color. So this one's a little different, and I can see this being used in more monocolor decks. But yeah, it's a pretty decent land. 3 and over when it comes to land conversion is pretty solid. When you get any more than 3, it's a really good gem converter. But 3 is probably the minimum that you want a land to do to make it viable in today's meta. Okay, we got Kellen, Daring Traveler. When this creature attacks, pick one of the first 4 cards from your library, fetch that card, and destroy the others. At the beginning of your turn, create a map token. And then the flip side of that, it's an adventure card. Create X map tokens. X is the number of artifacts supports you control, including their reinforcements. So, unfortunately, right now, it is bugged in that it does not destroy the cards that you don't fetch, which for mono white, that can be huge. It's really actually kind of hard to destroy your library when you're playing most white planeswalkers, especially mono white. So having this creature in there gives you the ability to do that, and that's great to pair with other white cards such as, you know, Starfield of Nyx, Brilliant Restoration, cards like that. Things that bring things out of the graveyard for you and put them onto the battlefield. It's still a really solid fetch card. It's a really solid way to fetch whatever you want from your library, because you're getting to choose a 4 deep into your library, so that's always good. And then at the beginning of your turn, create a map token, and we like map tokens. And then this is great. Journey on. Create X map tokens. So you can create a ton of different map tokens just by casting this card, as long as you have a decent amount of artifacts on the battlefield. And so what I like to normally do is put Kellen on the board first, and then save some Journey Ons in my hand for a few turns later once Kellen's created some maps, or Guillaume, or whoever you want that creates artifact tokens. Then Sentinel of the Nameless City. I did a whole review on him. He was an exclusive, or still is an exclusive at the time of this video recording. So it's got a lot going for it. I did a full review, and yeah, we don't have to spend a lot of time on there. If you want to watch that, I will put a card link to that too right now. We got Warden of the Inner Sky. 11 mana, 1/2 human soldier. Whenever you draw a card, this creature gets +1/+1. When you cast a support or creature card, draw a card. And at the beginning of your turn, if this creature's power is 6 or greater, this creature gains flying and vigilance until the beginning of your next turn. So this is basically a good combo piece. Possible loop enabler. I honestly haven't played this card properly enough, but if you want something like this is really good for Narset, because this creature is going to basically create some good loops for you if you're doing like continuous spell slinging, or if you're used to using red blue like Raw for creating some damage loops with spells with continuous card casting. This is good because it will, in Narset, let you kind of do similar to what Raw's third ability does, except when you cast a support or creature instead of a spell, because you're drawing a card every time you do that. So there's a lot of loops that rely on continuous card draw. So this is one way of creating that piece for you. So definitely worth looking into if you're the type of person who likes to create spell loops. Trumpeting Carnosaur, 13 mana for a 7/6 with trample. I mean, that alone is pretty solid, right? That's pretty good mana to power ratio, and it's got trample. But most of the reason you're probably going to be playing this card is because it's a dinosaur, and when this creature enters the battlefield, it discovers 4. So it's got a good enter the battlefield effect, and it's a dinosaur, which means a lot of other really solid cards interact with it in very favorable ways, such as Zilortha, that masterpiece dinosaur that can just put dinosaurs into play. This is a good pairing with that. When this creature attacks, deal 3 damage to the first opposing creature. That's also kind of solid too. You can eventually do a lot of damage and start to pick off their weaker creatures with it. So, fun card. I like it a lot. Tarion Soul Cleaver. 8 mana, 3 shields, artifact equipment. When a creature or artifact card you control is destroyed or loses a reinforcement, your first creature gets +5/+5. Then your first creature gains vigilance until the beginning of your next turn. This card is not being talked about very much, but it is solid. Like, that buff is permanent. A +5 buff whenever an artifact you control is destroyed. So if you're creating food tokens, gold tokens, treasure tokens, anything like that, and you're triggering that +5/+5, you can really make your creatures huge with it, and they get vigilance. So this is a really solid card. I think it's very underrated because it is also a very cheap card to cast, and it's got 3 shields, so it's not going to be broken too quickly. So definitely a card you should think about using more often if you don't, or maybe chase it if you don't have it yet. Hit the Motherlode. I love this card. 14 mana spell card. When you cast this card, discover 4, then discover 4, and create 4 gold tokens. So, for red, this is fantastic. I mean, it would be great in any color, but red could sure use some fetching and without having to, discard and things like that. So, this card not only will give you 2 cards in your library, give them half their mana, and you're creating 4 gold tokens, which is going to also get you mana. So this is a card I really like in Jaya, because you can, especially Jaya 2, because you can choose this card. If you choose this card with her second ability, you're getting 2 of these. So that's going to give you, basically, if you cast it, 4 cards with half their mana and 8 gold tokens if you cast this card twice. So that's fantastic. It's maybe not the best card for every Planeswalker, but for mono red, it's really solid. Then we got Molten Collapse. One of my favorite cards because, okay, we'll talk about it. It's 9 mana, black and red, spell card. Destroy the opposing card with the greatest mana value. This can affect Vanguard supports. Then if you descended this turn, destroy the opposing non-land support with the highest shield. And this can affect Vanguard supports. So mono red has needed destruction, just hard removal for such a long time. It's been a feature I've been waiting for mono red to have for the longest time. I don't like when mono red doesn't have this type of card in standard. I think it really weakens it. So I'm glad that they finally gave a way for red to have a card like this in standard again. And it is untargeted. It doesn't always hit the card that you hope it does, so that's one thing to keep in mind. But it is a really good card, and I think that you should chase it for sure. Right now it's an exclusive, so you have to buy it. But I don't know, if you really like playing with red planeswalkers, it might be worth picking up for a little bit of money there. It's up to you to decide that for yourself, of course. But yeah, and then of course, the king of the rares in this set, we've got Ghalta. 24 mana for a 15/15 with trample. It's a dinosaur. When this creature enters the battlefield, convert 15 gems to green. My favorite rare of the set. It does so much for you. That 15 gems to green is, in most cases, going to help you fill up most of your hand. It's just such a great bomb creature to drop. And it grows huge because it's a 15/15. Reinforce it twice, you're already at 45. And it just gets bigger and bigger. And it's rare that you actually have to hard cast this creature if you build for it. Things like Thunderous Debut, Blossoming Tortoise, anything like that. Well, even if you use a Traxa, you're going to fill it up with half its mana there already. So this is an essential card to have. Should be on everybody's chase card list for this set, because it's going to be in standard for a very long time, and it's just going to be a menace for that entire time that it's going to be in standard. So go get it. You're going to love it, and other people are going to hate you for playing it. All right, well, those are all the cards that I think you should take a look at when it comes to the rares, uncommons, and commons of Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So if there are cards that you think I should be taking a second look at, or just people in the community in general, you have some other hidden gems that you want to spotlight, let us know in the comments below, and maybe I'll take a look at them and possibly showcase them in a later video. So the next video I'm going to make is the top 10 chase cards in this set. So keep a lookout for that. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.